Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the launch of Chamber Connects. Boy, it's been a long time since we've been able to get together, and hopefully, we're going to be able to resume in-person breakfasts again later on this year. This morning, we're going to be connecting with one of our new state senators, Mike Martucci. Mike's going to be joining us in about another 5 or 6 minutes. He's on a um, radio interview this morning, but let me first just talk a little bit about give you an update on some chamber news. Um, one program I want to talk about a little bit is our Leaderful Delaware Emerging Leaders Program. We have revamped the program entirely. Diane Monroe, who many of you know, is going to be team teaching that program along with me, and we've are looking at a very different approach to leadership. One that we very strongly think is one that's much more applicable to where we are right now and what's happening in the world and here in New York State and here in Delaware County. So if you have folks who are interested in participating in that program, I would certainly encourage you and them to take a look at our website. Just do a search for Emerging Leaders or Leaderful, and you'll come up with that information, and the application is there. Classes start in mid-March. It's a 10-month program. We will wrap up in November or December. Classes will meet virtually 2 afternoons a week from 1 until 4. Another program is our 4 weeks to launch. We're working with DCMO BOCES on a kind of a new partnership, if you will, with DCMO BOCES, part of our new Entrepreneur Academy partnership. And the 4 weeks to launch class is going to be the first class that's going to be offered through that here in Delaware County. We'll be teaching that both virtually, and for those who wish to have that in-person experience, we'll be doing that. We'll be doing that here at the Business Center in Delhi. That starts on March 2nd. It's going to be Tuesday and Thursday evenings from 6 until 8. It's a 4-week program. Again, more information is available at delawarecounty.org. And I should mention, Lillian just handed me a note that just to remind you, we are recording this morning's program. We'll be broadcasting this on the Catskills Commerce Radio program next Friday. And our friends at Delhi Telephone have also agreed to broadcast this event on their local one station starting next week or so. Another new virtual program that we have coming up is Networking at Noon. Networking at Noon is really focused on you and you telling your stories about your businesses. So the real challenge here is can you talk about your business for only 4 minutes? That's something that we're going to find out. So we're going to launch that virtual program on Friday, February 5, obviously at noon, and we would certainly like you to join us. And just one last bit of news. Mike should be joining us in a couple minutes. There's been an awful lot of news over the last couple weeks, last 2 or 3 weeks now, it feels like, regarding PPP, EIDL, that's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. a whole lot more. So having that source of reliable and accurate information that you can use for your business has really never been more important. And I like to think that the chamber can be that one source for assistance, ideas, inspiration, and most of all, today in these days, facts. So if you're not already a member, what are you waiting for? We think that membership is truly an investment in your business every day. Um, we have a couple minutes before Mike comes on. One thing I do want to mention to you that hasn't gotten a lot of play yet. Um, I talked about it last week on the radio program with folks from the Small Business Administration. We've been trying to get the information out. Many of you remember the EIDL program, the EIDL loan, the economic injury disaster loan that was released earlier this year, back in April, I guess it was. And a lot of people applied. Most business owners were encouraged to apply. And the headline of that when that was released was, "Hey, $10,000 advance that is part of the loan, but it's forgivable and it's considered an advance on that to get some money out around in the economy." And then a couple days after that was announced, SBA said, well, it's based on number of employees. So if you have 10 employees or more, then you're eligible for the full $10,000. If you have less than 10 employees, you got $1,000 per employee. Well, that became as quite a surprise to a lot of us, but that's what the rules, that's how the rules were interpreted, and that was the case. Well, that program received additional funding in this past legislation. So what the Small Business Administration is doing, this will make some of your mornings, I hope. What the Small Business Administration is now doing is going back and looking at all those applications that they processed back in 2020 to determine which of those applications recipients did not receive the full $10,000. And so let's say, as an example, your company has 3 employees. You applied for the EIDL and you have 3 employees, so you got $3,000. Well, there's still a gap, if you will, of $7,000. So what's going to happen is, and you don't need to do anything in order to help make this happen. What's going to happen is that the SBA elves are going to now deposit $7,000 in your bank account. Again, nothing that you need to do. It's just going to magically appear one morning. So keep an eye on your bank account, on your tax records, your bank statements, because sometime soon, we think, that money is going to appear in those accounts. If you applied for an EIDL and it was held up for whatever reason, because some information was missing, they had to verify, and by the time that got done, the money was already distributed, was already dispersed. They're going to look at that set of records next. So anyone who has applied prior to like December 20th or something will likely, because there's a pool of money there, will receive some dollars from the EIDL program. So again, keep an eye on the bank accounts, bank statements, and those SBA elves will be in touch. If, and this is a big if there are any dollars left, once that distribution is done, then the the idle application process will be reopened. So it's everyone I've spoken to at SBA, at the upstate district level, all tell me, well, don't expect that to happen. But as I said, if you had received not the full $10,000, watch for that money to appear in your accounts. We haven't seen Mike yet, have we?
No.
Okay. He should be coming on shortly. We rely on your continued support, both for attendance at meetings like this and financial support to carry out our mission of supporting businesses here in Delaware County. And event sponsorship allows us to create those opportunities to learn and engage with regional leaders. This morning's event, Delhi Telephone, is sponsoring this morning's program, and I thank them for their continued support. While we're waiting for the senator to join us, I'd like to introduce to you Ken Prestage, who's going to give us a brief update on some recent developments at Delhi Telephone. Ken, would you do that, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Ray. My name is Ken Prestage. I'm with the Delhi Telephone, and this morning I'm filling in for Val Nichols while she takes a much-needed vacation. During the past 4 years, DTC has built out fiber networks throughout the community, throughout the Delaware County area. We've partnered with DCEC, we've partnered with Martucci Telephone, we've been a member of the New York State Broadband Grant, which is commonly called to us the BPO grants. So at this time, we're stretched from, let's say, from Worcester to our northeast to Afton to our west. So we're filling in gaps as we go along. The serving areas that we're in front of range, anywhere from Afton, the town of Bainbridge. We're on the outside of Sydney, and many others that I could list. If you certainly would send me an email, I'll be happy to share serving areas with you. DTC has constructed over 1,200 miles of new fiber optic cable throughout the Delaware County area. And when we're done with this build, splicing included, we'll pass 15,000 new locations. These will include many businesses. And the goal was to serve the rural and remote areas and homes to bring broadband to unserved or underserved areas. Right now, we're wrapping up our broadband grant, and we're getting the splicing completed, the testing completed, so we can start lighting up areas as we move through the community. DTC also is going to move into the RDOF grant program, which will fill in the gaps that were left behind, that didn't get caught up in the broadband grant. And we're happy to get them going as well. That kickoff should start here in the next few months. Anyone has any questions about where we are, please send me an email. And I'll tell you one of the greatest things, there's two really big things, not just serving the businesses in our area, but being able to help the school kids that did not have service. We made them a priority when the pandemic hit, and we started hooking them up as fast as possible. The other thing we're realizing is we're becoming real good friends with the local real estate market. Realtors are calling us weekly to see if we're in the area or someone we know is in the area, so that they can offer a home for sale with high-speed internet or broadband services to their home. We also get calls directly from home buyers that are looking to buy a piece of land or a home in our area. And part of the qualifications and requirements that they're after is high-speed internet. We're certainly happy to help them, and we're happy to promote it, and we're happy to promote the Delaware County area for this. So any questions, please let me know, and I'd be happy to help. I'd be happy to share information with you. Back to you, Ray.
Thank you, Ken. And Senator Martucci has joined us. Let me just, by way of introduction, let me just tell you a little bit about one of our new state senators. Mike Martucci is serving his first term as senator for the 42nd Senate District, and that includes all of Sullivan, parts of Orange, parts of Ulster, and more importantly for us, the towns of Delhi, Walton, Colchester, Hamden, and Tompkins here in Delaware County. He's been named the ranking member of the Senate Committees on Health, Mental Health, and Developmental Disabilities, as well as Small Business, Commerce, and Economic Development. Please note, we have the senator for about 15 minutes, I think. If you have some questions, please, you can post those in the chat area. Lillian's monitoring those, and we'll ask those questions a little bit later on in the program. Senator, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Ray, and good morning, everyone. So first, I want to thank you for having me. Certainly, the Delaware Chamber has been tremendous. All of you have been wonderful to me, and just kind of for the folks on the video here that I'm meeting for the first time, I have had an opportunity to talk to Ray several times as I prepared in the end of 2020 to take over the role, and several times this year already. And I've met with Todd and Jim, your executive board, and some others. So please know, first of all, that your chamber staff, and Lillian, of course, as well, your chamber staff and your executive board are all over the issues. They absolutely come to hunt me down, which is exactly what I'm looking for. And they do a great job advocating for you. So the good news is I come with a lot of information already from your group because of their great advocacy and frankly, their willingness to reach out to me and touch base early. Second, just to give you a little bit about me. So as Ray said, I'm brand new, been on the job 21 days at this point. I have never run for public office ever before in my life. I've never served on a town board, a school board, never been the dog catcher, nothing like that. I come from the place that you come from. I was a small business owner. So quickly about me, I grew up in Orange County and went to Marist College in Poughkeepsie and graduated with an MBA at just about the worst time you could do that, with the exception of today, perhaps, which is a pretty difficult time to leave school with a business degree. So with the absence of a lot of really any good job opportunities in 2008, I did something pretty crazy. I bought one school bus and started driving it on a public transportation contract here in Orange County. Just as soon as I had saved up enough money to buy a second school bus, my grandmother, who was retired at the time, does what every wonderful grandma does, and she came to help me, and she was my first employee. I always joke she was really kind of my first volunteer because I couldn't pay her a dime. But with the help of my grandmother and so many others, some phenomenal people over the years, I was so blessed to grow the school bus company from that first school bus to a company of just shy of 600 employees. I transported about 12,000 school kids to and from school every day here in Orange, Sullivan, and Ulster counties. In 2018, I sold the business to a firm that's actually publicly traded in the UK, a firm called National Express. National Express is best known for doing public transportation around the globe, including airport management. So basically sold the business to them in 2018 and spent about a year transitioning the business. And the reason I'm here today and I run for office is because I'm a young dad. I have 3 small kids at home, a 5-year-old son, a 4-year-old daughter, and a 1-year-old daughter. So I don't have to tell you about what home is like, but I'm certainly tremendously blessed. And so I run not only because I have a family here in New York that I intend on keeping here forever and having my kids grow up here, but because as a business person, I've been in your shoes. I know exactly what it's like to employ people in this state. I know the challenges of doing business here in New York. And unfortunately, one of the reasons that we see 125,000 people have left this state in the last year and more than 1 million over the last 10 years is because it's so difficult to be successful here, to have these sorts of opportunities, to create good jobs, and so many other reasons. So the reason I sit here is because I look forward in the state Senate to being a voice on these issues. Because unfortunately, in our state Senate, we have a lot of people who have experience signing the back of checks, but not so many who have the experience signing the front. And that's a perspective that I look forward to bringing to the entire group. So that's kind of quickly about me. Because I want to leave you plenty of time for questions, but I was thinking, and Ray, tell me if this is okay, maybe kind of the biggest thing that's happened in Albany this week has been the governor's executive budget proposal. So I think what I want to do is I'm going to do a super high level touch point of the governor's budget proposal, if that sounds good.
That sounds perfect. That was you're anticipating my first question to you.
Beautiful. So I'll try to do this in like 5 minutes or less because there's a lot there. So I'll super high level it. Then I'll kind of talk about maybe my perspective on economic development, small business, that kind of bucket, which is a bucket that I've been pretty blessed to be put in a position to lead on. And then I want to leave as much time as I can for questions from you. And then I'll tell you how to find me. That way, if you have got more questions or I can be of assistance in anything, you can find me. So quickly this week, biggest development out of Albany was the governor's executive budget proposal. So just kind of quickly, for those of you that might not be political followers of the process, the way this works is the governor puts out his executive budget proposal first. Then each of the legislative bodies, the state assembly and the state senate, will release what's called a one-house budget proposal. That probably won't come for at least a month, maybe even 45 days from now. And then between that time and April 1st, there's a negotiation process. And from there, we come up with a finalized budget that's agreed upon. So first step is governor's executive budget proposal. What are the big things that are in it? Well, first, I would say the two biggest items in the budget is the legalization, licensure, and sale of adult use recreational marijuana. That's outlined in the governor's budget proposal. That's something that has legislative support, and I'm here to tell you will pass. There will be a marijuana agreement by April 1st. So, really from my perspective, what I know is there is certainly potential economic benefit to this. I am not a hard yes or a hard no on this matter myself personally at this point. But what I know for sure is that as a legislature, we have an obligation to be the deliberative body that we are elected to be and be part of this process. So, a lot of stuff to weed out with the marijuana conversation. The governor's outlined his plan, which I think definitely warrants more conversation, but I want you to know first, that's in there, right? Second big item is really has to do with the legalization of sports betting in New York. As you probably know, a lot of people who live here do this. They just kind of get in the car and drive to Pennsylvania or New Jersey. They place their bets a lot of times on online platforms like FanDuel and DraftKings and those sorts of apps. And then they come back here to New York. So there is a plan. The plan that the governor's outlined is very different than the plan that the legislature outlined, mainly in that the governor is suggesting that it be managed in a way that looks a lot more like the state lottery system. So kind of a state managed system. So there'll certainly be a lot of conversation around that. The immediate benefit that these two things bring is revenue to New York State. So now we can get into the money. Look, here's kind of what I think is most frustrating about the governor's executive budget proposal. He provided two budget proposals effectively to us. One of them contemplates $6 billion of federal aid. The other contemplates $15 billion of federal aid. So there's a lot up in the air with respect to, like, if you said to me, Mike, what are the cuts that are in the budget? Who's making out good? Who's making out bad? What do the school aid runs look like? Well, part of the problem is there are two plans that are on the deck, and we don't know that either of them are reasonable. Because from my perspective, I think we're going to end up somewhere in between. Look, the governor is a very smart man. Certainly, he's had those conversations at the federal level with the changes at the Biden administration, changes at the U.S. Senate level. There's no question that there's an aid package coming to municipalities and to our state. And I, for one, look forward to this aid package because we need it now more than ever. I am 100% in support of COVID-related aid. We need it as a state. It's really important right now. The $15 billion of aid that the governor contemplates basically covers 100% of our budget shortfall in its entirety. And then the $6 billion, I think, is really kind of like what I would call the governor's doomsday plan, because I think that, again, we're expecting something in between those two numbers. So the problem is, as we kind of get into the next 3 or 4 minutes of conversation about what taxes are going up, what's getting cut, well, a lot of this is dependent upon where we fall in that $6 billion to $15 billion range, because I can confidently say we're going to be somewhere in there. And unfortunately, without kind of getting more guidance with respect to that, we start in a point that's really quite blind. I mean, look, you all build budgets in your businesses and in your professional careers. Imagine if I said to you, well, you don't know what your revenue is, build your budget. I mean, the fact of the matter is you can't build a budget without revenue, and we don't have revenue right now. That's kind of the issue. But to kind of talk about some of the things that are overall generally in the budget, there is a personal income tax, a PIT increase for New York's highest earners, which basically is going to generate somewhere between $1 billion and $4 billion, depending upon where that threshold lies. Under some definitions, our highest earners are individuals. I've heard conversations that these are individuals who earn $400,000 a year. And some people are calling our highest earners individuals that earn $2.5 million a year or more. So certainly there'll be a lot of debate and conversation about where that goalpost is placed, because that makes a very big difference. The governor also proposes deferring the middle class tax cuts, kicking them out through fiscal year 2026. This is something I'm certainly not in favor of, but that generates another $2 billion. That's part of his plan. There is some pandemic relief for our small businesses, which is good. I would argue it is simply not nearly enough. Only about $130 million has been earmarked at this point statewide. So that's certainly something that we'll be focusing on. And really what that has to do with is the governor is specifically looking at 3 new tax credits for businesses that will effectively generate that pocket of money. I talked about adult use cannabis. I think the biggest losers in this budget proposal are our local governments, really, because we're talking about, again, cuts to aids in municipalities. So really a lot of what happens fiscally here, the governor's proposing is shifted down to our local governments and really leaves it to them to figure out. And unfortunately for them, what it means is tax increases on property owners. We're back to that conversation again, which is certainly someplace we don't want to be. I know we've got, I see some broadband experts on the call here, which is awesome. They're well plugged into our state's broadband initiative. Certainly, I'll be talking a lot about the importance of broadband expansion in our rural areas. Unfortunately, our governor has prioritized requiring internet providers to provide lower cost plans to low-income customers. When I say unfortunately, I understand it's important, but I think that what I'm concerned about for our rural communities with respect to this conversation is that it's going to shift the broadband conversation from making sure everyone has it to focusing more on making sure that's affordable. And as I said, while I completely understand the affordability piece is so important, I don't think we've really met the first part of this mission, which is making sure that it's available to all New Yorkers. And if you watched any one of the 4 parts of the state last week, the governor so confidently says that 98% of New Yorkers have high-speed internet service. And it's like, well, the 2% that don't have it all live in my district, because that's simply not true. So, the reality is, from my perspective, before this state spikes the football in the end zone and says, we've made it, everyone has internet, now we need to make it affordable. It's like, wait a second, bring the ball back because everyone doesn't have it yet, So that's certainly going to be one of the bigger pieces. Also, higher ed is a big loser in this state budget. So our community college system, unfortunately, and our SUNY systems are going to see pretty significant reductions. On the lower ed side, there's actually a funding increase, basically of $850 million, give or take. But a lot of this, again, this 8% increase really focuses on the use of these federal dollars to do that. So again, a lot of this is contingent, really all of this is contingent upon those federal dollars. So I guess those are kind of like, if I had to give you the 50,000 foot overview on the budget side, those are some of the big items that we've got.
Mike, there are no questions, by the way, in the chat area, but we have a couple, and I think we still have a minute or two with you.
I've probably got about 5 if you've got a few
great,
minutes. I do want to talk about some unemployment stuff too, if you've got a minute. But go ahead.
Well, and let's talk about that, because there was an announcement made late on Friday, which was very good news for a lot of businesses, that the governor announced that there would be essentially a freeze on the unemployment insurance experience ratings for businesses that needed to lay off people and the like because of the pandemic. So if you would talk a little bit about that bill that's currently being considered in the Labor Committee, and also, you mentioned broadband, but here in our area, thanks to folks like Delhi Telephone, Hancock Tel, Margaretville Tel, we have terrific broadband in many parts of our county. Cellular service becomes a whole other issue. So if you would address, talk about those two.
Awesome. So first, let me give you some more good news on the state unemployment front. And then absolutely, I know the cell service is something that Todd in particular had brought me up on the issue in a very good way, and we have a plan in terms of that moving forward. But so first, state unemployment insurance. So great news, as Ray said. I have good news for you, Ray. So as of Tuesday of this week, that bill has left the Labor Committee and has passed the state Senate. So we passed a bill this week, which I was proud to put my name on and support, that absolutely holds our businesses harmless with respect to experience ratings with state unemployment insurance. I mean, look, my perspective on this is simple. You know, if you, for whatever reason, have closed your business or reduced your business's capacity for the good of the public, because I understand why that had to happen, the public has to share that expense with you. We can't shift that expense to you and ask you to bear that entirely. So Senator Persaud had sponsored a bill that so many of us proudly put our name on, and we passed in the state Senate, that absolutely codifies the governor's promise into law, and we're confident that he'll sign this provision when it makes its way to his desk. So that's one bit of good news. The second thing that we took up with respect to state unemployment insurance, which I believe is going to be good for really all of our employers statewide, is changing the way that we look at part-time work. For those of you that deal with unemployment insurance now know that it's based on the number of days that you work in a week. And as we begin to re-ramp up business, so many of us are returning employees on a part-time basis or a partial basis. And what we did this week was passed a bill. It was Senator Ramos's bill, which again, I proudly put my name on and supported, which was a bill that now evaluates unemployment claims by the number of hours worked versus the number of days worked. So if you're in a situation where you're able to return an employee to work, so say that employee was working full-time, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and now you've got partial work available where they can work 4 days a week for 4 hours a day, or 5 days a week for 4 hours a day. You can do that without it being punitive to your employee, because certainly so many of us have dealt with that in the past where employees say, you know, I can't do this work schedule because I can't support my expenses. And at the same time, I lose the ability to file the unemployment claim. So it will give you as an employer the flexibility to optionally return workers at that level.
And would you just mention we have about a minute or so, cell service. That's a huge issue for us. We know we have broadband, and when someone is at a place, broadband through Wi-Fi can be helpful, but driving around, you know, looking at, well, you know, where's my signal? That becomes a real issue. Not only is it an economic development issue, it's a public health issue. And you and I have talked about that. What are those steps do you think that we can take toward that?
Well, so first, I've had a conversation, as I said, with Todd on this issue, probably, you know, just looking back a couple of weeks ago. What I want to do first, really, Ray, is, you know, as folks on this call well know, cell service is not regulated by Public Service Commission. We can't make a cell provider come in and do anything under the current provisions of the law. So my plan is pretty simple. What I'm interested in doing is I've made a point of contact with Verizon as a starting point. And myself and Todd and Ray, at least for starters, are going to have a Zoom or some sort of meeting with folks from Verizon, because I think Todd really outlined an outstanding plan to me, a really good business case, quite frankly, why our cell providers should be looking at your region in terms of opportunities from a tourism standpoint and in terms from so many others. So I guess what I look to kind of say here is, as a business person, I'm looking to approach this relationship with the cell phone providers in a different way. You know, rather than me kind of go to them and bang a drum and say, you absolutely need to come here and here's why. I think we can make an attractive business case, quite frankly, because there are a lot of things happening in Delaware County, and as tourism ramps back up and so many other things ramp back up, you know, I believe that there's opportunities there. So really, for our purposes, that's where I want to start as a starting point. And my pledge to you is, after we have that initial conversation, I think it's going to paint a roadmap in terms of where we go forward, because again, I don't think that it's been approached in that fashion, you know, kind of collaboratively working with some of these cell providers, or at least working with one as a starting point. So what I look forward to is joining you next month or the month after, hopefully on a 5-minute update, where I can report to you from that first meeting, where we get real decision makers at the table to talk about this.
That'd be terrific. How can I know you need to jump off to your next appointment? How can folks get in contact with you and your crew?
So there's two ways. First, I'll give you a phone number. And again, if any of you want to talk with me individually, please call. I'll be happy to call you back. Number here at the office is 845-344-3311.
I'm sorry, we got garbled a little bit there, Mike. Can you give us that number again?
Can I put it right in the chat for you, Ray?
That would be wonderful.
I will
And
dump in the chat.
we're going to send that your contact information out to everyone who's on this call, and when we post this video, we'll try to include that as well in there as well.
You got it. I'm going to give you an email and the office number in the chat. And like I said, if there's any, I know it was a very brief morning, but I certainly thank you so much for having me. I always appreciate being here. Look, like I said, please, if there's anyone who wants to reach out to me directly, please do that. I'm going to give you, again, you've got my contact information there. Ray's got a line to me. Todd's got a line to me. So anything I can do, Jim, I see here's on the call. He's got a line to me. So anything I can do for any of you, please don't hesitate for a second to reach out.
Well, we're looking forward to working with you and your team to advance the interests of the business community here in Delaware County. Thanks for your time this morning, and we're going to make this probably a regular thing with you. So you can
I'll
count
be here
on
anytime you'll tolerate me. I'd be glad to be here.
Thanks again, Mike.
Take care, everyone.
Good to see you. Well, we have an opportunity to. We have some new members that I want to put a little spotlight on here this morning. Again, membership in the chamber is I think really a critical part of anyone's business, and I encourage you as members to encourage others to take that plunge and become a member. The first, I want to introduce a couple of our newer members to you. Who can just to tell us a little bit about what they're doing in their businesses. The first one that I'd like to introduce is Mercedes Gonzalez, who has Just Shop. They're on Route 28 in Arkville. So Mercedes, tell us a little bit about Just Shop.
Well, good morning, everyone. I opened Just Shop in Margaretville actually about 8 years ago, and funny story is I opened it because my day job is I do retail strategy planning for new businesses, and I help distressed retailers and fashion brands become profitable. So that's my day job. So I like to consult from experience, and I opened in Margaretville, where Barbara is right now, a small boutique a couple of summers ago because I wanted to prove that rural retailing could never be profitable. And here I am 8 years later because it is profitable. So I'm able to teach from that experience. I moved from that small store across the street to the movie theater. Irene had other plans for where my location should be. And then I ended up 3 years ago across the street from Jack's from the caboose. And basically what we try to do in the store is it's a mini department store. It's a family store. I buy off price and closeouts from major brands. And now the department stores seem to be getting rid of so many things because the consumer doesn't want to go online. And trust me, online is not profitable. They don't want to shop in a big mall. They don't want to shop in a department store. So I'm actually very hopeful for the boutique independent retailer because that's where the customers feel comfortable in shopping. So we have a little bit of everything for everybody. And it's always like a treasure hunt because you never know what I'm going to be buying that week or that month that comes in as a closeout. I also try to, there's always a conversation about like, do you cater to second homeowners or weekenders or to the locals? And I cater to anybody and everybody. Like I structure my price points to be cheaper than a Target, but with national recognized names. So anyway, in a nutshell, that's what I've been doing in Arkville.
Mercedes, tell us about your virtual shopping experience that you've done, because you know, businesses across Delaware County really have pivoted during this time of pandemic. And I think what you've done is pretty brilliant. So tell us about what that was like.
Well, thank you. So a couple of things. So I do use my store as a petri dish of experimental studies to see if it actually can work in a rural community. It definitely translates to some of my other clients. So I did two things this year. First one was pretty easy. I used one of the photographers, local photographer that does real estate photography, and you can do a 3D tour of the store. You can walk in, you can look to the left, to the right. And it's funny because the first time I did it, I actually really spent a lot of time and money and energy and actually putting all the things like highlighted so you could click on it and buy it. And what I found is people were just taking screenshots and just sending me a text message and saying, hey, can you tell me more about this dress? So it actually the high tech works best low tech, like the old kind of fashion way. And then recently I added one more thing in anticipation, in case we have to close again, to do what I call solo shopping. So now I've set up the store with Google applications. So a person can actually ring my doorbell. I can see who it is. And then we start FaceTiming on their cell phone and we can walk around the store together. I actually can give them a key code. I can turn on the lights. I can turn on the music. They can walk around the store by themselves with nobody being there. They can pile up the things that they want to try on. They can, and I have enough cameras to watch them, and they can. And we've actually done it a couple of times now where people have come in and then they scan the tags. I send them an electronic invoice and they pay. So we've done it about 6 times since December, and it's been very successful. And 2 people were like last minute Christmas shoppers that didn't realize that the store closed at 4 on Christmas Eve, and they did what they had to do. And the other ones are just what I call the nervous Nelly that nobody talks about, which is this consumer that is still really frightened to go into public spaces. So they just prefer to shop alone.
Terrific. Thank you, Mercedes.
Sure.
One of our newest businesses here in Delaware County, oldest businesses in Delaware County is the Hancock Herald. And I'm happy to tell you that the Hancock Herald has a new owner after being closed for several months. And Cindy with the Hancock Herald is joining us this morning. Cindy, tell us about what's happening at the Hancock Herald.
Okay. Well, as you said, we're a new old business in publication since 1873. So that's pretty old. But I bought the business from the previous owner who had ceased publication in March. And I bought it in October. So we're back up and running. And just a little bit about my background. I have lived in Hancock almost all my life. I was born here. My parents, raised here. My parents are from here, lots of family. Went away for a couple of years and came back. And my background is 25 years in education, as a teacher, as an administrator, as a boarding school owner, that kind of thing. So I've worked with young people for a very long time. And then we closed that school, and I went into the private sector and did some work actually with working for an SDVOSB company, which is a service disabled veteran-owned small business. And I really got a lot of education and background. I did some marketing development for them is what I did, marketing and development. And the idea of small business, which has always fascinated me. My husband and I own several small businesses in the Hancock area, a motel, movie theater, and now a small newspaper. And what I'm most excited about the newspaper is it's so important to building a sense of community. If a place has a newspaper. And before I bought it, I did a lot of research because everybody said, you're crazy, print's going out. That's old news. Why would you get involved in the print business? It's a dying breed, right? But like Mercedes said, there's room, there's a niche for, you just have to adapt. And the truth is nobody else is going to print an article about the Hancock Village Board meeting notes, but that just isn't going to be printed anywhere or covered anywhere. And people love to see pictures of their kids playing sports, which hopefully will come back, published in the local papers. And and I'm having a ball. I'm really enjoying it and getting out, meeting people that I didn't know were around. And so I'm really just happy to be here and be part of this group. Really, it's exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. And folks, you can get more information about the Hancock Herald and Just Shop Boutique, both on Instagram and on Facebook, and of course at DelawareCounty.org in our business directory, in our membership directory. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning. We'll be broadcasting this program next Friday on Catskills Commerce on WIOX Radio 91.3 or WIOXradio.org. It'll be appearing on Delhi Telephone Company's Local 1 fairly soon. We'll be posting this to the Chamber's YouTube channel, which, by the way, if you haven't already subscribed to the Chamber's YouTube channel, I do encourage you to do that. We post weekly videos about what's happening with the Chamber and in the area often. There on, like I said, on a weekly basis. Again, we have some events coming up. Leaderful Delaware, networking at noon, our 4 weeks to launch. Lots of other things that are happening here at the Chamber. If you find that you're driving through Delhi, by all means, stop and see us. If the sign is turned on the door, that means we're off doing chamber work somewhere else. But by all means, stop by and see us. Encourage folks to be members. We rely on those membership fees, honestly, to continue to deliver services for businesses and to businesses here in Delaware County. Next month, our third Thursday program, we hope, is going to feature one of our other new state senators, Peter Oberacker, who represents most of Delaware County, all of the eastern part of Delaware County, and his district kind of sweeps around the county a little bit. But we hope that Pete will be joining us for this type of forum. And remember, we're stronger together. We'll see you next month. DelawareCounty.org is where you can get all the information about everything that we've talked about here today. Thanks for joining us. Stay safe, wear a mask, and we'll see you next month.